Hey there hunters, nobody asked but here we are, another Torchlight video. This time I'm revisiting an old favorite from last season, the Beamstacker Yoga. I love just, hands-free autocaster, autobomber type builds, and since this was sort of the league where they revamped all of that with mediums, I wanted to play something like that, but pretty quickly realized that, mediums are pretty expensive. So Yoga, what makes it really cool is his illusion, this guy here, will autocast your main spell for you, and my spell of choice is Lightning Beam. So every time, or every 5 times you cast Lightning Beam, you get a little orb that follows you around, these guys, and these orbs will auto-cast beams at the closest enemy they see. So right now I have something like 10 or 11 orbs, so that's 10 or 11 times, plus my casting, plus my illusions casting, makes for a lot of damage. Do a quick dummy test here. Hands off the keyboard. Ramping up, ramping up. 7 Billy, 8 Billy. Give me 9. Okay, 9. Oh, 10. 10 Billy. There we go. So, damage, pretty good. Now in terms of clear, which is really what everybody cares about, let's just run an 8-1. I'm working on getting 8-2 all done. So you basically just turn on mana boil and run through the map. I usually don't cast myself, but on harder bosses, or elites rather, that I will cast myself. And I do have some mediums for my curse and my forced start, but there's actually some mechanics within this build that lets you get around needing to use mediums. I love this build because it's very tanky, has very strong recovery, as well as hands-free auto-target mapping destruction. Alright, that was an 8-1 boss, evaporated. You can see that super strong recovery. And energy shield is just busted compared to life. It's not even fair. Okay, so let's go over the passives. Do the traditional Goddess of Knowledge with Magister, going for Beacon, Insight, Bunch, and then rather than play safe, which is a lot of damage, we are using Barrier of Radiance, because as a shield build, this is probably the single strongest node. You either want to get this on the tree or get a Divinity Slate. Um, there are some other options, but it's really hard to beat the 50% charge speed. Then finally, we're using Steel Vanguard to help us get maximum elemental resistance, to super buff our empower and defensive skills, and then to get a bunch of really strong defensive nodes, as well as efficient cooldown skill effect and aura scaling. For our slates, I'm using preparation. This allows me to get additional damage on the tree. The pedigree, you don't have to use a pedigree. Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility here. I got this from my first traveler kill, so I just decided to use it. Then otherwise, I'm looking for spell burst, uh, agility blessing generation, maximum focus blessings, extra blessings, and this is just a generic damage node. There's a lot of options on slates. You can go for levels. That's also very efficient. Um, I was playing a blessing stacker before, so I had a few of these decent slates, so I just decided to keep using it. For my gear, it's pretty rudimentary, just generic crafted rares. buy something with 2 stats you want, roll it a couple times with Flame Sand, and then upgrade the stats you want with the green stuff. The most important item is you want to get a double T1 staff. Mine is +3. I need to get a better one. But you want the +4 beams and +4 level, because spell skill level is one of the biggest scalers you can get in this build, because it's actually not you that's doing damage, it's the illusion, and the illusion scales really well with spell skill level. So since I wanted to take this guy into T8, I did focus on capping my resists, and getting as much LA res as possible. So in all my gear, I've got energy shield, resists, etc. The 2 Legos I'm using are Sage's Insight, because it's a very, very power efficient slot. You get levels, you get ES, generic percent damage, as well as 24% shred, which is actually pretty easy to get. You can get it a couple ways, but right now I have cold damage on my neck, fire damage on my staff, but then you can also get triple added on slates and other places. So for my skills, Lightning Beam is the main one. Efficient Cast is just hard to beat. 2 beams, 2 beam supports. These are just, you're playing a beam, you got to use them. I'm going for Added Lightning and then Overload. Since I have 8 Focus Blessings, I'm getting the maximum effect out of this. And something I've noticed is I think that support skills are scaling with global spell scaling, so I don't know if that's really intended or not, but that means that in builds like this, supports that have the spell tag are getting a bunch of levels. So I'm getting something like 54, 55% additional damage at my full stacks, and this debuff is kind of nice too. For start, of course, I'm using activation medium energy shield with a high roll. So anytime my health goes below 69%, nice. For start will kick on, but then I also have in Magister, I have this. So whenever my energy shield gets low, that will also kick on. So I have 2 layers. So the first layer will be I get below 70%, my force start kicks on, and then during that cooldown, if I get hit again, go down to low health, it'll immediately kick back in because of this talent. So that's paired with barrier, that really makes for consistent, fast recovery, because you're not going to be able to get interrupted, and you're just going to be recharging so fast that almost nothing's going to be able to damage you through it, as long as you're stacking enough mitigation. Now, there are a couple different ways you could take this character. I am maybe a little over invested into defense, but I really hate dying. You could certainly swap out the rings for more damage mods. Uh, Chest, you could probably get higher damage option, or maybe Helm would be the spot. But so far, I just kind of wanted to make this as sort of generic as possible, because there's just so many different scaling vectors. Once I get to a point where I'm kind of hitting a wall, then we can move forward. But right now, with 8, 10 billion DPS, I'm progressing through 8-1s and 8-2s. And once I get all my 8-2s unlocked, I'm just going to start farming there before I can get the big bucks and push this guy into deep space. But yeah, I do have some old videos on this character from last season. It's 10 times the damage, way more defensive, overall much better. But I think in large part that's due to the buffs they made to Youga. So let's actually talk about that. Um, One thing here is for every 1 spell levels, your Twisted Illusion guy gets a whole bunch of damage. And then here, he doesn't have casting actions, and it's only limited by frequency and cast speed. So you want to stack as much cast speed as possible, and work on getting additional damage for this guy. So I'm using this hero engram, whatever. So it makes for 60% additional damage for my guy. For basically, as long as it casts 10 spells, which is 2 clicks, inside the illusion, my guy gets 60% additional. And then here, I'm just going for +1 spells and additional damage. Yeah, overall, this is a really fun build. Hands-free, don't have to aim, auto-targeting. Let's see, I am running 3 auras with a Thunder Spirit. Thunder Spirit with Mark and Protection Field gives me a bunch of damage and makes me extra tanky. Elemental Resistance for the max res, of course, and then Precise for damages. Energy Fortress, OP, of course. Electrocute with the medium. Mana Boil, whole bunch of scaling, and then with the Steel Vanguard, this is probably giving something like 40% additional damage, and it burns your mana to give you space time energy, so hard to beat. Candles, there are some options. I opted for two +2 lightning skills. Spell levels just really seem like one of the strongest ways to scale this character. But overall, I'm really having a lot of fun. I like the changes that XD made, and I had been trying to find a build that I could really push into harder content, and I think this one's it. Overall, maybe 300, 400 FE into this character. The majority of the cost is going to be in the slates, relics, and candles. The gear is pretty cheap. So far, I bought most of my bases for less than 10 FE and then just self-crafted, but it's going to get a lot more expensive trying to get T0s and those more specific mods. But stay tuned. This is one of my favorite characters. I'm going to keep pushing it. Make sure to leave a comment, like, subscribe if you play the build or you want to try it out. Have any questions, please let me know. Stay tuned and see you next time.